Good evening and welcome to this, the third union debate and indeed emergency debate of term. Two notices from me and we'll get straight into it. The first is that we are still, hoping that people will join Speakers and Debates Committee. Please help us ensure that that hope is not in vain. Speakers and Debates Committee are responsible for inviting speakers to speak in speaker events and debates next term. It's a really great thing to be part of. It's an opportunity to be part of a team putting together one of the most ambitious programs of student events anywhere in the world. So it's really something that it's actually very enjoyable and very worthwhile to contribute to. So if you're interested in that, please drop an email to speakerselect@cus.org for the Speakers Committee or executiveelect@cus.org for the Debates Committee, or approach one of the people standing on this dais a little bit later on, or indeed the guy waving over there, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Second, so the motion for this debate was not inspired by what I was doing last night, but rather by what I was doing last Thursday afternoon. I was actually at a debating tournament in Ireland where the chief adjudicator, who was inspired by what he'd been doing the previous evening, set this motion. If you would like to go to debating tournaments, or indeed if you would like to go to Ireland, completely subsidised, then union debating is something you might enjoy doing. We hold weekly debating workshops on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. It's a great opportunity. You don't need to have any experience to take part. It's a fun thing to learn in and of itself. It also means you can get sent to exotic competitions in places as far-flung as Edinburgh, Dublin, and of course the lovely Coventry. So, with that said, let's get straight into the emergency debate. Briefly, the rules. Speeches will be 5 minutes in length. Points of information are encouraged between the end of minute 1 and the beginning of minute 5. Just guess if you're not certain of the timings there. Anyone can make a point of information, be they audience member or, speaker. Stand up, say point of information on that point. Have a short, snappy 15-second interjection, and that's your chance to contribute to the debate. If you would rather make a more substantive contributions, there will be floor speeches after the second speeches. Again, stand up. Before you make any sound within the chamber, unless it's coughing, please state your name and college so that we can record that. Regine, the secretary, has to write that down. It's part of our arcane constitution, so please be sure to do that. So, with that said, let's get straight into it. The motion before this House is this House would watch porn. And without further ado, I'd like to call upon the first speaker, Alex Kay, who is a graduate student at Corpus Christi College, to propose the motion that stands in his name. Hear, hear.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with watching sex. It comes from an innate desire that exists within every single one of you. The need to be sexually attracted to other human beings, the need to engage in sexual acts. And it comes from a very basic function, obviously, biological and evolutionary, that we need to procreate, we need to engage in sexual acts to continue the human race. And as a consequence of this, every single civilization which has been capable of capturing sexual imagery has done so. That ranges right back to prehistoric times when we have crude stickmen pornography images on caves, through to Roman erotic pottery. Not really sure what they're doing with pottery, but still nonetheless sex on pottery. Thirdly, we have also, in 1748, the first erotic novel in the English language, Fanny Hill. And I guess that brings us right up to the modern day with Brazzers.com. The world's best porn site, although I guess that is open to personal preferences. So the point is that pornography has always been a natural outlet for this sort of sexual desire that we all have, right? And it comes out of a need to get rid of that tension that we build up in our everyday lives when we engage in sexualized encounters with other human beings, whether that's in the back of a lecture theatre with a particularly attractive lecturer that you might have, or even just someone walking past you in the street that gets you a little bit aroused. Pornography is a way for us to get rid of that sexual tension that we build up in the day in a way that is very much enjoyable. So, before I get on to sort of my main speech, I think it's important to point out what I don't have to defend in this debate. I'm not going to go out and say that everyone should go out and watch what I'm going to characterize as malicious porn, right? I'm going to say that, of course, porn can have an effect on you, but insofar as you can, that shapes your sexual desires alone, and that has an intimate effect on you and not on other people, that's fine. But the point at which that sexual desire and your sexual actions reach beyond that sort of intimate context and change the way you approach different people in different contexts, we're not so happy about it. Examples of this, right? Firstly, objectification, simulated rape, not cool with that. And similarly, bukkake, right? When you have hundreds of men jerking off onto the face of a woman, that woman is not there for sexual gratification. She's just there as a sexual object. We're not going to stand up and defend that sort of porn. And similarly, we're not going to defend morally reprehensible porn such as paedophilia. In both of these instances, agency is what is key. We're perfectly happy with things like BDSM, right? If people are going to be willingly consenting to sexual acts, and it's clear that there's a degree of sexual gratification that comes from being controlled, as well as controlling another person in that sense, and both parties are enjoying that, which in BDSM definitely are, that's absolutely fine, and we definitely encourage you to go out and try out some new BDSM porn this evening. Recognise, though, that sex isn't inherently submissive. The opposition might try and tell you that perhaps the porn industry is submissive in the sex that it shows. It's obviously not that true, because in the majority of the time you're watching porn, it is just people having sex, and that act is not necessarily oppressive in and of itself, because both parties are enjoying. I mean, there's an equal exchange of sexual gratification in those encounters as much as there is an equal exchange of bodily fluids. So, moving on to some benefits. I'll take a POI if anyone wants to give one in a minute. Here's some general benefits that we think come from watching porn. Firstly, it allows people to explore their sexuality in a meaningful way, to figure out what arouses them, what they find attractive, and what they want to enact in the real world, right? You might be, for example, sexuality doesn't exist as a monolithic construct with two poles. There are many shades of grey along that tract. You might be a heterosexual male, for example, and be attracted to feeding women and BBW and all that sort of stuff, right? That's perfectly fine, and pornography gives you a way to go and explore that in a way that's meaningful to you, right? So porn gives you access to this sort of imagery and allows you to figure out whether you like something before you actually have to go and commit to it. An example of that might be role-playing. Okay, thank you. An example might be role-playing, right? You might find it cool to go and watch someone dress up as Legolas and have sex with a Legolas, right? But it doesn't mean that you have to commit to physically dressing up as Legolas and trying to get your jig on with Arwen or whatever before, when you realise you actually don't want to be there in that situation, you're finding it quite uncomfortable. Sorry, you're out of time. Secondly, it's actually quite educational. So when we're looking at relationships, porn is a great way of spicing up your love life and recapturing that sort of awkward excitement of the fumbling that you get the first time, right? And once you just mastered missionary, if you're a bit hesitant about what to go on after that, whether it's reverse cowgirl or the passion projector, then whatever it is, seeing that in showing you exactly how to do that can actually be quite helpful to actually enacting it in the bedroom. And as soon as you can do that and you can spice up your love life, that is a big boon to those sexual relationships, those sexual partnerships, because both partners can now gain more sexual gratification from having sex. So for these reasons, we'd absolutely urge you to go out and watch way more porn.
Hello? Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex. Okay, and now turning to the opposition bench. The first speaker on the opposition is Zach Hassan, who is a student at Jesus College. Over to you, Zach.
Orgies, anal, tit wank, POV, granny porn, tranny porn, and a word with the potential to gross out even the most seasoned pornography watcher, bukkake. We are the first generation with access to a litany of porn genres, limited only by your internet connection and how long you can last. The proposition would have you believe that this is a harmless means of reaching the righteous goal of satisfying the male sexual appetite. But I'm going to tell you that this is not true. But what I'm not going to say is that this is a male-only issue, although there can be no doubt that the porn industry is male-dominated and male-orientated. And I'm not going to say that we should ban porn. This debate is not about that. It's about whether we rationally today would choose to give up porn because of its negative effects. But first, some rebuttal. So first prop gets up and he says, well, porn's just about exploring your sexuality. And I've got a problem with this because what happens when you bring this into the real world? When your boyfriend asks you, ladies, if you want to do anal, do you really think it's because I love you so much and I just want us to explore all the possibilities of our self-expression as sexual beings? It's more likely that he's seen it in porn and now he wants to try it on you. That is not liberation. The point is, it's not a real sexual appetite. It's a social pressure created by learned expectations from porn being brought into the real world. But on to my substantive case. Point number 1, porn is harmful to the user. It's like a drug. Research done here in Cambridge has found that it triggered the same circuits in your brain as alcoholism and drug abuse. The more you use it, the more desensitized you get and the more you need. If you don't believe me, try giving up porn yourself. There's a 55% chance that you will not be able to do this for longer than a week. 1 month, forget it. There's no chance. The point is that there's an unhealthy relationship with porn, and that's becoming the rule instead of the exception. Second point on this point, this is a drug that affects the sex lives of its users. A substantial number of men are losing their sex drives because of porn, and these are not incontinent men, old men that we're talking about. This is young men, upstanding men like the HUS President Greg Hill, who some say can bench 200 pounds in the gym that he built with his pelvic floor alone. But seriously, doctors are worried about young people, not old people. So let's talk about the harm to your partners as well, because some people would argue that there's objectification, and there's probably some truth in that. But as I say, the second point, and the more important point, is that there's a social pressure to be more like porn stars, both in body image and sexual performance. And this is an unrealistic expectation we're putting on ourselves and our sexual partners, and it's not fair. So, second point, this is about why porn inherently impacts our relationships. It's because we're conditioned to specific stimuli. There's something called the Coolidge effect. The arousal that you feel is a product of the novelty of the stimulus. So you rarely get off to the same video twice. Showing a stimulus, if a stimulus doesn't meet the novelty that you're used to, you're not going to get turned on by it. The novelty of porn is higher than ever. You can see hundreds of new women in hours. And we're placing women in a position where they cannot compete. Yes, I'll take your point. Well, the point is that when you stop watching porn and you want to have sex with a real person, you're not going to be able to do that. Your performance is going to be harmed because a real woman now can no longer compete with the novelty that comes from watching like tens of porn videos in an hour. No, thank you. I'm running out of time. Second point on this point. So boys first encounter porn age 10, way before their first relationship. If you want to dispute the ages, it doesn't matter. The point is that we're conditioned to novelty years before we ever have our first relationship now. From day one, we're training ourselves to be turned on by pixels instead of people. So on to my third point about the benefits of giving up porn. And to do this, I want you to tell you about a subreddit called NoFap. It's a self-improvement community calling men and women to give up pornography. Before you dismiss this as a weird internet site, they have 92,000 subscribers. For comparison, the subreddit for Christianity has only 75,000 of subscribers. They've been featured in documentaries and are now being used for research even here in Cambridge, all investigating the claim that giving up porn increases sex drive, concentration, confidence, and decreases erectile dysfunction and anxiety. So I just want to end on this small point, that teaching ourselves instant gratification is not a healthy habit. It seems to me that being able to resist the impulses that we all have when they are not appropriate is a quality that makes us human above all others. The porn industry has long been accused of physical and economic exploitation, and if we think that's a cost worth paying in our quest to spunk all over our Kleenexes, then I think we lose our moral integrity as people. I beg you to oppose.
Thanks so much, Zach. Okay, now's the bit where we open up to the floor for floor points. So, does anyone have a point to make in proposition of the motion? Please try to keep your remarks under 1 minute. None of you are vocal about wanting to watch porn. Ah, Richard.
Richard Parkins, Trinity College. Well, I make my point of information since you didn't let me. If the first opposer thinks that a real woman can't compete with porn, I would suggest he hasn't had sex with a real woman.
Cheers, Richard. Points in opposition. What do you want to respond? It'd better be a good quip. Save it for your speech. Any points in opposition? You're a dispassionate bunch. Oh, great.
Yeah, sorry, Rose Beale, Trinity College as well. Can't quite compete with that. Just want to take you up, Sarah, on some of your points and actually your approach to proposing the motion. So you got up and said, oh yeah, basically, guys, it's like biology. So like, yeah, biology, we've all got to watch porn. And if there is this biological connection, then aren't you excluding people with different sexual orientations? Not only people who aren't heterosexual, but also asexual people who don't feel this urge all the time.
If you want to respond, sure. Yeah, with the microphone.
We're actually going to cover that in the next speech, don't worry. We're not an exclusive side over here.
Thanks. Sorry, thank you. Okay, any points in abstention? This is the opportunity for the rest of you who are dispassionate. Thanks.
Cheers. Karthik Krishnan, St. Catherine's College. It's like with anything, right? In moderation. That's the point here. So don't do it all the time. Let's not have the union endorse it, but let it slide.
Thank you very much. Okay, second point in proposition. Come on, come back for more. And my mother told me persistence would be rewarded. In everything. Okay, any points in opposition? Fantastic! It is rewarded.
Mother's always right, and there's a genre of porn for that.
Apologies, go right ahead.
Molly Lewis, Jesus College. I feel like I've been bested there, but just a small point on the fact that it could be suggested that porn sells. It's quite good for the economy. People like to buy it. Just look at 50 Shades of Grey. Female-friendly porn is making a rise in the world. That's it.
Thank you very much, Molly. Okay, any points in opposition? Yes.
Peter Sibley, Jesus College. I'm not entirely sure how good a point this is, which is why I've decided to take so long to think about it. But I'm going to take issue with a statement you made, which was that it's biological. It's a biological factor to sit in front of a computer and watch porn. I don't think that's not biological. I thought sort of relieving yourself or masturbation is biological. Purely watching something else is not biological in the same way as watching Top Gear or watching anything else isn't biological. It's the act of relieving yourself that is what you're sort of conditioned to do. That's what gives you the pleasure. It's not simply the act of watching, which I think is what, if I understand you correctly, you said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and a final point in abstention. Right, fantastic.
Molly Jones, Mary Edwards College. As the other Molly over there said, 50 Shades of Grey has been a huge success. That's porn that you read. The motion here is about watching, and it's therefore quite exclusive. It doesn't include porn that you can listen to, porn that you can read, and therefore it doesn't cover quite all of the bases.
Thank you, Molly. Okay, that concludes our floor debate. And now to move on to the second half of the main debate. So the second speaker on the proposition debates is Sarah Doré. Sarah is a student at St. John's College. Sarah, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'd like to start by addressing some of the points that the opposition made in your speech. I think the first thing I want to address is when you said that watching porn, we shouldn't do it because we're rational, because we're all rational human beings and we can make a decision to not do something like that. Well, sex isn't rational. Sex is never the rational thing to do. You know, the rational right thing to do is giving money to charity. It's not having sex or masturbating for a start. So it's an emotional thing. The second thing I'd like to address that the opposition said in their speech is the idea about the boyfriend coming home and asking his girlfriend for anal and that being somehow a bad thing. I don't know about you, but I would much rather that my sexual partners asked for what they wanted. There is nothing inherently wrong with requesting gratification from your partner. And you presumed that the woman wouldn't be okay with that, that she might also not have seen that in a porn video the week before and might not have enjoyed it as well. You know, there is nothing that says that heterosexual sex has to be completely one way. Yeah, go for it.
Obviously, if the lady was up for that, and the opposition would totally back up her right to do so. But we think in the majority of cases, they would actually feel uncomfortable with it. No,
what are you basing that on? As the only woman on the.
I'm saying that in the case I'm saying that there's a pressure to please where they might not want to.
If you're feeling pressured to please your partner, that's not an issue to do with porn. That's an issue to do with having a bad relationship where you don't feel able to express yourself. That's a completely different issue. Excellent, thank you. Okay, right. Okay, also, shall you address the point about that? Okay, right. Moving on, something else you said, which is leading me on to my first point that I want to make actually, was you said that porn, or the watching of porn, is there for male sexual gratification. Well, I think if I asked the women in this room how much porn they watched, or if they watched porn, I'd get a very slight showing of hands. But I don't think that would be because you don't watch porn, or because you don't enjoy it. I think that would be because you're ashamed to say that you do. And the reason for that is because we live in a patriarchal society where men's desires are catered to and expected to be expressed, and women's desires are expected to be muted and held back. Pornography is something that actually women can have access to easily and privately, and something that actually can help them to explore and express their sexuality and to masturbate. You know, this is something, again, that women are not encouraged to do. We're not told that it's okay, but actually it's something that the majority of women do. And if porn is something that can help you with that, and that can help you to figure out what you like sexually and in a partner, then that's a great thing and something we should be encouraging as a way of liberating women. And then additionally, you made a point about the kind of bodies and the kind of sex and pornography that is available. And you said it was heteronormative and it didn't cater to asexual people. Well, starting off on the point about asexual people, obviously we didn't mean to suggest that asexual people should feel any pressure to watch pornography or that they should do so. If, that they do not feel sexual desire, that's fine. My little sister's asexual. I would never expect her to watch porn. She has other ways of enjoying herself romantically, and that's fine, but that's a very small minority. But moving on to other minorities like people who are gay or lesbian or transgender, porn is not just for straight people. You mentioned the variety of porn that you can get on the internet nowadays. It's not hard to find, porn that is, targeted towards gay males or lesbians, and that's actually really healthy, and it's really healthy to watch people engaging in acts that you yourself would do. in a way, yes?
Patrick Flynn, St. Catherine's. I actually recently saw a video about lesbians reacting to lesbian porn, and it's very clear from watching that is actually not tailored to the lesbians, but to men who want to see lesbians get off.
Oh no, that's an excellent point actually. But that has more to do with porn culture than the actual porn itself. And that again is an issue where the porn that people are watching is directed towards the male gaze, is directed towards male gratification. We're not arguing necessarily for that kind of porn. We're arguing for a greater variety of porn. We're arguing for more porn, if anything. Porn, frankly, porn which is, catering to more different ideas. In recent years, we've had a real rise, for example, of feminist porn directors, women and men, for that matter, men can be feminists, who, make porn with female gratification in mind, who make porn as sex actually happens. And that kind of thing also creates lesbian porn that is more accurate. But you're right, it's not all good. But going back to the gay porn, it's something that you don't often see in the mainstream media, and it's something that can make you feel quite marginalised as a person of the LGBT plus community. And, I can't remember the last time I went to see a film in which there were actually, gay characters. So it's sad that we live in a culture in which we're so heteronormative and we're so used to just seeing straight imagery. But if you are gay and the only way that you can experience that is by watching LGBT porn, then that's only going to be a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And now our last speaker in the opposition bench, and indeed the debate as a whole, is Mark Nelson, who is a PhD student in nuclear physics, or some such, at Pembroke College. Mark.
Some of you may be wondering, especially those of you who are better at Google, may be wondering why I'm up here. In fact, you may find it's extra hypocritical for somebody with such an illustrious filmography to be addressing you all today. But, wow, so British. That was a joke. I have not starred in any pornographic films. It was to warm up the audience for a better reception to my main thrust. Anyway, I would posit first that there's a problem, as our last speaker noticed, that, well, a lot of porn comes out of a porn culture, and I would say production is primarily about who will pay the most, and often the people who will pay the most or are the biggest group of paying subscribers are people looking for a very specific image that reflects what they want to see in pornography, which may not be the best way to provide sex education. I, in fact, have a radical thought that sex education should come even outside for-profit pornography. I know it's crazy, and in fact, I'll probably lose my citizenship later tonight as an American. Certainly in Oklahoma, they don't allow much sex ed besides don't have it, condoms don't work, and you will be damned. However, I would say that a thorough sex ed would cover the benefits that you mentioned in for-profit pornography without the need to fumble around searching through the mountains of regressive porn in order to find your little bitty nuggets of sexual education. Anyway, a few other things. You might have picked up on this, but what we heard from the opening speaker on the opposition is that as Cambridge students, it is our duty not to watch porn, but to study it. In fact, this brings up a different angle. Any minute you are watching porn, that is a moment you aren't out actually exploring the things that we had the proposition claiming you had to explore by watching a very specifically staged event. And as my ill-timed ejaculation from the bench was, I mentioned lube. And that is because if you try to take your sex positioning and your sex act specifically from a highly edited version of reality or distended version of reality, you're going to end with a very bad sexual experience and need to go back to your porn because humans will probably not put up with you again after that. Anyway, I heard a story recently from a fellow student here who was coming from the film industry in Hollywood, that after a law was passed in LA, or an ordinance was passed in California that pornography had to demonstrate that it was using condoms rather than hide the fact or not use condoms, or require anyone who was new to the industry to basically believe that they had to forego normal sex health in order to participate in what they might have been led by maybe pornography watching to think was a normal way to earn money. Well, I'm afraid that there was a move of roughly an estimated loss to the economy of LA of about $1 billion from porn producers moving to Florida, where they were assured they would not have to demonstrate the usage of condoms. And in a country like America, where we don't believe in teaching about condoms, this is especially important. So watching porn uses up your mental bandwidth in unrealistic fantasies when you could be having your own realistic, or if your imagination provides, unrealistic fantasies of your choosing with humans of your choosing, even if that comes from reading books like we heard about 50 Shades, which is if you've read any of the critical theory around 50 Shades, you'll find out that it's actually a bit of a perversion of BDSM, which says something in that it represents an extremely unequal relationship between a powerful person and an intern. Anyway, lots of problems there. So there may be issues with written porn. And about this being a giant stimulus for the economy, along with the $1 billion lost to California to Florida, there are many things good for the economy that are bad for people, like war, or, as our side of the bench would like to argue tonight, pornography. You can reduce pornography a bit by watching it less and going out and enjoying your humans more. In fact, right here in Cambridge, I'll draw to a close by mentioning that one night that I did not spend watching pornography, I walked up the street, and when passing St. Cat's, there was a beautiful display of entwined humans in the window. So if anybody lives or knows who lives in the second window along King's Parade, above from Eden Ravenscroft, I believe it's St. Cat's Housing, there were two people very, very vigorously enjoying the window. And that's how to enjoy, either watching or performing. Be in porn, don't watch porn. Thank you very much, and please vote for our side of the argument.
And thank you, Mark. So that draws our debate to its eventual climax. It's now time... Come on, I'm trying, guys. That draws our debate to its close. It's now time for the audience vote, which is where you decide who won. Voting will be by acclamation. So if you think the proposition won on 3, shout aye. If you believe the opposition won on 3 in the separate count, shout nay. And finally, if you'd like to abstain, please make a non-committal sound. Maybe sit awkwardly in silence, or sing as we're voting by acclamation, and as such the sound that you make is important. Go or some other sound of confusion. So, on 3, if we could have those voting in proposition of the motion, 1, 2, 3. In opposition of the motion, 1, 2, 3. Prudes. And those of you who'd like to abstain, 1, 2, 3. Thanks so much. The nays have it. The nays have it.